we're going to talk about a couple of things. I shared some topics and questions with the ladies before today. And we're going to start off, though, just taking a minute or so and tell us how you got to where you are today and just a little bit about yourself. Courtney?
Thanks, Tina. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I'm in a room full of very successful women, and it's just an honor to be here to speak to you all today. So thank you for that. But as Tina said, and as in the program says, I am Courtney Baxter, and I am the first elected female Commonwealth attorney in our jurisdiction. And my path has, I've been an attorney for 23 years, and I went to law school primarily because I was raised in the world of law enforcement and I always had an interest. And so I thought I'd start out in the public sector and as a public servant. And when I graduated from law school, I actually went the private route and practiced law as a private insurance defense lawyer for a while. Then I started prosecuting for an agency called the Kentucky Education Professional Standards Board, which does licensure verification for teacher misconduct. And that was a contract that I had that enabled me to continue my practice as an attorney and also be at home with my kids. And had a lot of flexibility. I traveled around the state, but I worked out of my house. And then when my children were in school full time, I went out to LaGrange where my husband had started his practice. I guess he's in his 25th year now. So right out of law school, he went out to Henry County, then subsequently ended up in LaGrange. And I began to assist him in his practice and then had the opportunity to get hired as an assistant Commonwealth attorney from our prior Commonwealth attorney, Barry Moore, who retired. And I knew I had come home and found my passion. So I didn't, my path wasn't to get into politics. Politics was just the avenue to get me into the position that I feel is my calling. So that's just a little bit about me.
Good. That is great. Brandon's going to work on your microphone, too, while we move on to Candace. If you read anything about Candace's bio, you, I think she's been doing the news since she was about 8. So, Candace, tell us about that.
I'm Candace Close with WDRB, and I've been pretending to do the news since I was a small child. I have a friend in my hometown in West Tennessee who somewhere has film of us doing the news. So they think it's hilarious that I get a paycheck for doing this. But I've always loved that. However, in high school, I was going a different path. I was good at math and science, which most journalists are not. They're horrible at math, typically. But I was good at math and science, and I did not love language arts. I mean, I made A's, but I didn't love it. And so when they do these career assessment things, try to help you figure out what you should do with your life. And I decided I was going to be a pharmacist. And so I went to school to be a pharmacist. And in the middle of my sophomore year, the light bulb went off. I thought, I don't like this. No, I don't want to offend any pharmacists out there. It wasn't for me. But I'm sitting in class going, I'm not, what am I doing? You know, I'm not going to enjoy this. So I changed my major to journalism, English and journalism, and I absolutely loved it. And, you know, I fully believe that you've got to do whatever you're passionate about, and you'll find a way to make it work. And so I studied journalism in Tennessee, and then I went to the University of Missouri, the oldest journalism school in the country, for graduate school. And when I got, the job I'm in right now is my first job. I came here as a news reporter, and I worked nights and weekends, and then eventually had some other opportunities to move into anchoring positions. And I've been doing WDRB in the morning for 10 years now. Actually, this past month was my 10th anniversary, and Jay McDowell behind the camera over here was my first director. So he made me look good. But I had some wonderful opportunities, and the funny thing about TV is you usually start in a really small town, you do the same job, you move up in a bigger city, you do the same job. There's a lot of movement. That's why the reporter you like today is gone next year. That's just how you move up, and I've been so fortunate to be able to move up without moving out here, because I've lived here now as long as I've lived anywhere, and I love it. I love Louisville. My family loves Louisville, and I've just had wonderful opportunities. But when it started, when I applied here, classmates of mine said, I don't know why you're applying for a job in Louisville. That city is too big and you're not going to get a job there. And I said, well, you can't win if you don't play. So all they could tell me is no, and I'm going to give it a shot. And sure enough, I got a job and haven't looked back.
That's great. That is great. We've watched you grow into this job, so we're glad you're here. Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea, and I did not ever set out to be a baker, but as a child I could rock an Easy Bake Oven very well. And I enjoyed it. I went to school at the University of Delaware, and I intended to study, or I did study psychology with full intentions of going to graduate school and becoming a child psychologist. It's all I had wanted to do from third grade on. And so I've finished my degree in a very rapid 3 years, and at the end of those 3 years, I was a little burnt out on school, so my parents had just moved to Louisville and said, why don't you live with us for a year, get a job, and see where, it takes you before you move on to graduate school. So I did that. I got a job. I met my husband. I stayed. I didn't go to graduate school. And then after 5 years, we had our first child, David. He's 9 now, and when David was born, I left my day job and stayed at home with him. And then I just started to bake all the time. I baked everything, and I couldn't stop. It was kind of like nesting in reverse. So we would have cake parties, and we'd have our friends over and try all the cakes I made, and eventually they were like, stop, we're gaining too much weight. So I said, I've got to find a place to sell this stuff. So we, the next year, started selling at the LaGrange Farmers Market, and that has grown, and we still sell up there. And after another couple of years, after we had just had our second baby, Miles, got the opportunity to purchase an established business. It was a very small business, and take over a lease on a commercial facility. And I said, are you crazy? I have a 2-month-old and a 3-month-old, or 3-year-old. And my mom said, go for it. Why not? Whoop. Sorry. It was emphatic, too. And of course, my husband was very supportive as well. And it was a good move. So yeah, we would take Miles to work and have him in the playpen, as Dina said, and then what? Oh, sorry. Oh yes, I carried Miles on my back when I was working too. That was fun, because he did not like to be put down, so that was a challenge. Am I doing that? I'm sorry.
Your energy level is so high.
Sorry. I'm Italian. I speak with my hands. I must be doing it somehow. So, and then about 2 years ago, a neighbor of mine and I were talking, and she was buying a property on 53 and said, I think the one next to it would be a great bakery. And we looked at it, and I walked in, and I looked around, and I said, yep, this will work. So after we bought that, and now we have a bakery, and it's right on 53, and it's a lot of hard work, but it's wonderful. It's grown wonderfully over the last 6 years, and I'm very proud to call LaGrange and Oldham County, where I live, where I work, it's home. So thanks for everyone's support. I know a lot of faces in here. So.
Good job, good job.
I could probably pick out what all your favorite cookies are.
Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer Willis, and I'm the commercial sales practice leader for Humana here in Louisville. And I feel like I'm on this panel today because I've had a pretty, interesting journey that had always been faced with interesting challenges. So I'm from Chicago, if you don't pick up the accent yourself. Many of you that I already talked to said, yeah, you're from Chicago. But when I was in the 6th grade, and as you know, any of you that have 6th graders, know that can be a kind of traumatic time growing up. My dad came home one day and said, we're moving to Yanbu, Saudi Arabia. And so we got on a plane, and we got shipped over there, and we lived overseas for several years. But when I got to the 9th grade, there was no more school for women. So I got shipped to Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, to a college preparatory, very exclusive boarding school where a lot of Chicago elite sent their children. So I was a fish out of water there for sure. And when I was graduating from high school, I announced to my parents, rather than go with the scholarships that I received, I'm going to be the hairdresser to the stars, and I'm going to move to Los Angeles, California. So with
Yeah.
tears streaming down my parents' face, I got into my Grand Am and I drove myself to California. While in California, I met a lot of great friends, but this finally kind of came to my senses after several years and moved back home with mom and dad and applied for a job at Humana. That was almost 19 years ago. I was the receptionist in the Chicago sales office. So I guess my journey really speaks to you can really achieve anything you set yourself out to be. I was someone without a college education. I could do hair really well, and just a lot of life experience, and someone took a chance on me and gave me a job answering phones, and now I'm at a vice president level. So I'm really excited about being here today and sharing these types of experiences with you.
Great. Well, what a wonderful I'm going to move around a little bit, and we won't just keep going down the aisle. So, Candace, I want to ask you, what are some of the challenges and hurdles you had to overcome? You talked about coming here, and your friends said you'll never get a job there, but you did. What was that like? What were some things you had to overcome?
I think the biggest thing you have to overcome is self-doubt, because you put together in television, you send a link now, but you used to send a VHS tape of your work, and it's very subjective. Somebody the employer can put it in, look for 10 seconds and go, no, I don't like the way she looks, or I don't like the way she sounds, or whatever. And I still have the list of about 50 cities that I sent those tapes to before I got a job in Louisville. And I think the biggest thing you have to overcome is self-doubt and keep telling yourself, I've worked hard for this, I'm doing good work, and somebody's going to recognize it. And it's a competitive business. You can't really let your guard down. There's no cruise control because somebody else is always going to have the position you have. I work on a contract, so I don't, it's not like I'm employed forever. It's a 3-year contract, and at the end of the 3 years, we discuss, we renegotiate. If they want me to still be there, then we can reach another contract. But thankfully, it's not Patino's one-day contract. But there's no cruise control. So I think you have to keep your confidence even when people are telling you no. And that took a few months. I graduated from graduate school in December, and I was hired here in March. So that was 3 months almost of working, for minimum wage at the TV station that I learned in, just hoping to get something. But I think that was the hardest part. And then, knowing how to, and then I think too, being willing to sacrifice, because I was always going to the news director once I got here and saying, hey, if somebody's off on that holiday, I'll work. If somebody can't come in on a weekend, give me the chance to try the anchor chair. Let me, and that means you have to give up some of your own time to get those opportunities, but they pay off.
That's also good advice, I think, with any industry, any career that you're on. Sometimes when you're working your way up, that's the thing you have to do is put yourself out there when nobody else wants to do the weekend shift or the dirty work or something. Jennifer, you had such an interesting story getting here. What are some of the challenges you've had to overcome working up the corporate line at Humana, especially?
Well, I think, since I didn't take the traditional route and start my job with a college degree, I really felt compelled to earn that degree. And so it took me 6 years working nights and weekends, raising a baby. I've got a wonderful husband and 2 kids, and just doing all that while still giving 110% at work. And I always, one of the tips, I guess, that I would give to young executives coming up through the ranks now is always dress for the job ahead of you, not the job you have. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit funny to some, but take the time to iron and press your clothes and look like $1 million when you come into work every day, even if it is a pair of black slacks that you bought from Kohl's. Putting yourself together really makes a difference, and it makes you feel great every day when you're at work too. So that's what I would share.
I think that it really is good advice. I tell young people that a lot when I go and talk at high schools. Shake hands, stand up straight, look in the eye, and dress like you care about what you're doing. So, Andrea, what are some of your philosophies about success and some of the challenges that you had along the way?
I would say overall my philosophy is, I don't know, it's go with your gut, because every decision I've ever made with business has felt right. there have been moments where I said, well, we could stay where we are, or we could buy a building and make it into a bakery. We could, not purchase this business and I could continue to raise my kids, or I could go back into the workforce. And every time I had one of those questions, it seemed as if doors would open at those moments, and the path was there, and I just had to be brave enough to take it. And my husband, of course, was supportive enough to say, let's do it. And then along with go with your gut, then you have to have the determination to follow that path. You have to just work at it. I had a 3-month-old baby. It was my first Christmas of fulfilling cookie orders. Nancy's nodding back there because she was one of my great, wonderful clients when I first opened. And I was nursing a baby all night and decorating cookies alternately. So Miles would be crying. Mike would call me over at the shop. It was about a 5-minute drive away, and I'd hear the baby crying. So I'd get in my car and I'd drive home, and I'd get Miles back to sleep, and then I'd drive back to the bakery. And that was 24 hours of that at first, just because I did not have the speed. So, it was a lot of work. And opening up the bakery, before I could hire staff, I opened the shop every single morning for 6 months. It was just me working from 5:30 to 7, making every pastry that we sold until my mom would get there, or Pam, and, So I would say, go with what feels right, and then make sure that you follow through with it.
Good, that's good advice. Courtney, what about you? What are your philosophies on success?
Well, you have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone. You have dreams and you think, I want this so badly, but you've got to be willing to do things that you're not necessarily comfortable with. I've been a trial lawyer for 23 years now. But the thought of having to go and knock on people's doors and ask them for their vote and sell myself instead of a case or a cause for a victim of sex abuse was completely different and very uncomfortable for me. And I spent a year campaigning, and I remember thinking, I can't do this. I signed the papers to file for office, and I thought, how am I going to ask people for help? How am I going to do this? I'm not comfortable talking about myself or my accomplishments. And I thought, well, the only alternative is I either don't do it or I get off the couch. So, my big philosophy is that don't ever have any regrets. Go after your dreams and have lessons learned. So no regrets and lessons learned is my philosophy. I also encourage anyone that has a dream, find yourself a mentor or mentors in the things that you want to do, and be willing to ask questions. There is no bad questions. There are people out there that can help you. They're willing to help you. Seek advice and keep your ears open.
That's really good. That's really good advice. Great advice from everybody. I want to ask a little bit harder question now, because these are things that I want to ask when I'm with women who are successful like you guys are. And I want to talk about fears. What are some of the fears that you've had along the way? And we won't ask everybody that question, but Jennifer, I'm looking at you, predominantly. What are some of the fears that you've had that you've overcome, or that you even still have, and how are you working through them? Because I don't think we talk about that a lot.
Right. It's a hard thing to even acknowledge, because you go home at night and that's where you think through your fears. You think, am I good enough for that next role? Am I smart enough? Am I thin enough? Yeah. I'm sure some of us might have thought through that. Or am I going to be passed up for something like if I need to leave to bring my children to the doctor? I mean, it's the reality of life. And I think that over the last, at least I feel it in the last 10 years, that the workplace environment has started changing to start allowing for more of those flexibilities, because we know we've got such great, hardworking people that are very, very dedicated to their jobs. But the reality of life is that you've got a life outside of your job. And So, giving people flexibilities to work out in the morning, to take walks and get away from their desk, to be at their kids' recitals and sports events and whatnot, is very important to the overall well-being of the associate. And you actually end up getting way more out of someone when you have those kinds of flexibilities. So I guess tying that back to a fear is that as leaders, we were a little fearful that if we give too much, that we're not going to get the production that we're going to get or that we need. And I can wholeheartedly tell you that in my shop, I feel like we get more production than ever with less people because we have such a good, flexible, open environment. So just kind of overcoming the fact that people have things that they need to do in their life. And I guess another piece that I would mention is really try to, women have a great ability to go with their gut and to have a gut feel, but seek to understand. I think that was one of the things that as I began to better understand what people needed, I was a much better leader for it.
I want the audience to be thinking about some questions that you might want to ask too, because we're going to save a little time at the end for a couple of questions. Andrea, what about you? What are some of the fears that you've had?
I could say they could be categorized into business-related and family-related fears. On the business side, I would say, I'm a very small bakery in a, relatively small town. What happens if another larger, more, corporate bakery moves down the street? What will happen to my little shop? Will we be impacted? Will we suffer? And I address that by saying, we're small enough to be flexible. If that happens, I'll just change the business plan. We'll focus on custom cakes. We'll do something else. We're young enough and small enough that we can be flexible. And so I really don't worry about that as much. But whenever you hear a rumor about something moving in, it's like, ooh, I don't know. But, I think we'll be okay in that circumstance. On the family side, I do work long hours, and my husband's there pretty much every morning getting the kids to school. I worry about the impact on my sons. I worry about, am I there enough? When I am there, am I present enough? Am I, really setting them up for, their success in life? And to combat that, I feel like we've tried to do a good job of making them feel like they're part of the business, that it's, kind of our family thing. And they have a playroom that we built at the shop that's their space. And, and I know they're very proud of me, and they're proud of the business, and they're good representatives, out in the community. And so we try to make them feel like they are, as much a part of this as I am, or as Mike is, or anyone who works there. And then we try to make our time together. Like Sundays, we call Family Fun Day. And we try to pack it full of as much wonderful time as we can. We'll go on little day trips and do all sorts of fun things. So I guess that would be, as a working mom who works long hours.
Enough time in the day. I want to talk about the sisterhood of friendships. Candace, how do you maintain your friendships with the girlfriends maybe from long time ago, years ago, and the ones that you've made here in Louisville? And how important is that to you?
Well, the friendships are very important. I'm terrible about maintaining old friendships because I don't live anywhere close to a lot of the people that I was very connected to. My best friend from graduate school is in Kansas City. My college roommate, one is in South Carolina and the other's in Tennessee. So thankfully, thanks to Facebook, I keep in touch with them that way, and we send each other messages from time to time. Here, my way of keeping in touch with girlfriends is through lunch, because I get off at 11:30, and a lot of them have the ability to leave work and have lunch, and we couldn't do it at night. If I counted on a girls' night, it would never happen. For one thing, I go to bed by 9:30, which means I have to start the routine earlier than that. And my older daughter is 12, and she's in a lot of activities. My son's about to be 8. He's already into baseball and doing some other things. And then I have a daughter who will be 2 on Monday, and she's a 2-year-old. She's quite the handful. So I don't have time at night for me. So the afternoon is mine, and that's where I connect with friends. And I've honestly learned a lot about friendship being here away from family. My husband and I we've got all of our families in Tennessee. And I don't have anybody I can call, like a family member that I can say, I have to do this tonight, can you come over and watch the children? That's not an option for us. And I had a really hard time, like you said, in asking people for help with politics. I don't like to ask for help. I don't know, I've always felt like it's just some sign of weakness, like I can't handle it if I have to ask somebody for help. And I've really changed my philosophy on that, and as a result, I've been blessed with some wonderful friendships. But we have some close friends who have children, same age as our children, and sometimes I just have to call them and ask for help and say, Lori, there's no way I can get Kendall here and Nate here, can you help me? And she, and I know that I would do the same thing for her, but I've had to learn a lot about that, because if she called me, I wouldn't hesitate to say, absolutely, I'll be there with times I need to pick her up. But I felt so, I don't know, I had this real issue with asking other people for help. But in doing that, I have grown some friendships into really, really tight bonds. So I'm glad that I'm getting over that. And as a result, I feel like my life is better. I hope that I'm helping make somebody else's life better. And then we try to just have our little lunches every once in a while to be away from all the craziness.
I think so many of us could identify with that. That it's a sign of weakness if we ask for help or if we need help. So I'm glad you shared that. Courtney, what about you? How important are friends to you, and how do you maintain those friendships?
I couldn't do anything without my girlfriends. I grew up in Middletown, in Louisville area, so I have a lot of my friends that I grew up with, and I'm very fortunate. And so they have been there for me throughout my journey. And my children are older now, so I'm not in the same situation that you are. My daughter's in college, and I have a son that's a junior at St. X. So he just got his license, and my days of carpooling are over. So it's this sense of, wow, I've been driving for years, it seems like. So I have a lot more time now that my daughter's in college to spend some time with my girlfriends. But in the days before that, my high school group would get together once every couple of months and play bunco. I'm also the member of a book club that I've been in since my daughter was 1. And we get together once a month. We pick a book. We are from all different walks of professions, life. Some are older, some are younger, some are in different stages, some have grandchildren. And so that's been a real gift to me in my life to be able to share my experiences with them. They have been an incredible support system for me, and I don't know, what I would have done without them. I have actually had a little less time now that I'm the full-time Commonwealth attorney to see them as much, but I do keep up with them on Facebook or text messaging and that kind of thing, which we all get frustrated by that technology, but it also helps us stay connected, with our friends. It's just with a short note, how are you, just checking on you, and that's one of the positives of having that type of technology. But again, female friends, we celebrate each other and help us get through the rat race of running a career and raising kids, and we're an incredible resource to each other, and I know I couldn't do it without my friends.
Well said. We are a great resource to each other. Candace opened the door for routine, so I'm going to ask two of you about routines. What is your routine on just an average day? And because you're an exception because you have to be at work so early.
Right.
But what's your routine like on an average day?
I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have to be at work at 3:30. So, and the way I do that in 30 minutes comes to the end of the day routine. But I get up at 3. I'm at work at 3:30. I work until 11:30. On Wednesdays, I then go to do some work for KET until about 2, but that's an exception. But most days, I come home from work, eat something and go straight to bed, take a nap, get up, and it's my goal that before my daughter gets home, if I don't have the carpool, we alternate weeks. So if it's not my week, my daughter will be home around 3. And because she's 12, she's all right to come in the house by herself, for a little bit. But in this weather, I'll get out on my bike and I try to ride for about an hour. I absolutely love riding a bike. So I'll ride from my house over to Anchorage and just try to get 15 miles or so in, and come home. My son gets home at 4:15. Usually I've got dinner going early because they both are cross-country runners, and you can't do that on a really full stomach. So I try to feed them early, get them out the door. We got a carpool going for that too. Pick up the little one before 5, and then we start iron the shirt, make the lunches, And then I set out all my stuff just like I do for my children. I mean, the dress is hanging up, everything. I shower at night. So all I do in the morning is get up, brush my teeth, wash my face, put on my clothes, make the coffee, grab my bag, and I go out the door. So I've got it. I mean, it's all very regimented. But I have to say my routine has changed this year because I've always had the metabolism of a racehorse, and that has slowed down with my 40th birthday a few months ago. Not only that, but having my third child at 38, I didn't snap back from that one like I did the other two. And I was getting really frustrated with that and a little depressed by it. And it's like one of my coworkers says, when you get mad enough about something, you'll do something about it. And so I told my husband at the beginning of the year, I said, look, I got to do something. I got to get back in shape. I got to claim some time back for me. And it's hard for me because when I get home, I want to sleep. I only get 5.5 hours of sleep at night. I usually am not in bed before 9:30. So the sleep is a priority, and my doctor has said you're going to kill yourself if you don't sleep. But then I would struggle to then exercise because you wake up and you're a little groggy. And so I made it a priority this year to change the way I eat. I've hired a personal trainer, and that came at a good expense, but was worth every penny. And we worked on my nutrition, eating the right foods at the right time to feel better, working on getting a real good routine for exercise so it wasn't I ran 3 miles yesterday so I can eat cake and I don't have to run again until Saturday. I consider it a failure if I've only exercised 3 or 4 days a week. But it has changed how I feel. It has changed how I look. I've had to carve out that time and say it's mine. But I have a husband who runs marathons, so he understands that. And thankfully, we're a good pair. And, but it takes a lot of teamwork.
That is, you have to really make time for your own health.
Yes.
And it's hard for people who work and raise kids. I have one more question, then we'll just take one or two from the audience. And that is, I want to talk about, two of you work with your husbands. And Jen, I know that you came here and your husband followed you for your career. So I want to talk, let's start with you, Jennifer, about how did you come to that decision? What is it like for your marriage? And what do you do to make sure that you're nurturing all those things that we're trying to do to take care of our relationships?
It was not easy because my husband had a full-time career as well, and when we moved here, we determined that we would need to figure out financially if we could afford to have one of us stay home. Our kids were in grade school, and a lot of my job requires travel, late nights, a lot of work, events, things like that. And so kind of working with my husband to get him over the I'm Jennifer Willis's spouse, not Jennifer Willis's Tom's spouse, is a big deal. And it took a lot of work on my part too. I think I could probably share, if I had a group of men, what you need to be doing when you go home to take care of your wives, because I could run a class on it, because I had to get myself in check every single day when I drove home to not start dumping on him all the trials and tribulations of what I went through in a day. I need to ask him how his day was. I need to know about what happened at carpool. I need to know what happened with the kids at school, and really allow him to express what he needs from me first. I can't tell you about all the thank yous and the thank you cards and how wonderful dinner was and how the laundry was done and how I love the way he pressed my slacks and things like that. Just all this appreciation had to come out just to kind of get him over the hump. And now we look back on it and we laugh because it was a little bit overwhelming. I was kind of overdoing it just because I knew how fortunate I was to have my husband agree to put his career on the back burner, to be a full-time dad at home, and to take care of the kids, and to be in a room full of women all the time. He would say to me, how did you used to do that? How could you walk into that room and all of the women talking? And but he's learned to adjust, and he is the best thing that ever could have happened to me and to this family, and I couldn't even imagine doing it any other way at this point.
Brittany, what about you? You're with Barry all the time.
I am. He is. Well, I will start off by saying we just celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary. And he's amazing, so. I'm sorry, I get emotional about him because I feel like I've been blessed in the spouse that I have, because I will tell you, he has been my biggest champion. He has never told me there was something that I could not accomplish. And that's a gift, to have somebody in your life tell you that every day. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And every time I talk about him, I get kind of emotional, so that's kind of silly. But anyway, we have been practicing law together for about 10 years, and we weren't sure how that would play out because not only do we practice law together, but we're both triathletes and run marathons, so we train together as well and do a lot more of that now that our kids are older. When they were younger, we did a lot of tag teaming in terms of training, so there was a lot of negotiation of time. But now it's time that we share, in addition to the time we share at work. He is now, I am not a member of our firm anymore because my position is full-time Commonwealth attorney. I cannot do a private practice anymore, but he is my first assistant. And prior to that arrangement, we were both assistant Commonwealth attorneys and tried cases together that were very serious cases involving sex crimes, children victims, and that is it's very stressful work, and you carry it with you, and when you've got young children, you see your children, and you feel an awesome responsibility, and we're both carrying that burden. So we've got the war room at work, and then we bring it home during trial, and we're working out the next day's tactics. We weren't sure how that would play out, but we have tried 3 cases together that were no less than 2 weeks in length, working over 200 hours in a month, and I can honestly tell you we never argued. He has his strengths as an attorney, and I have mine. I know what his are, and he knows what mine is, and so, we're really fortunate how well it has worked out for us, and it has really strengthened our relationship, I think. And my marriage, as a result of us being able to spend so much time together, has become more than I ever thought it could be when I married him 23 years ago. So.
Great. And Andrea, your husband's here, so you have to say nice things. But just very briefly, tell us what it's like to work with your husband so much.
Oh, well, it's pretty cool. I gotta say, we started this, we were foodies long before we had kids, and we would travel to eat. So we would travel all over the country, the world, really. We went to Italy on our honeymoon, and we just ate through Europe. And so we would always have dreams of, and someday we'll open our own restaurant, and it's gonna be so great. And then you have kids, and then you kind of say, I don't know about that, but we actually did it. And he was right there. He built most of the shop that you see today, the counter there, and all of, painted most of the walls, all of that work, in addition to, raising our kids.
And you live to talk about it.
Yeah, full-time, pretty much, Little League coach to both boys' teams. He has a full-time job that takes him all over the state, but he still does it all.
Good.
He's there in the morning to get him
Good.
get them to school, and then also does all my butter and egg deliveries from Costco.
Well, and Mike,
2 or
we're
3
glad you're
times a
here
week.
too. Thanks for all your hard work. Let's give it up for the panel. Thank you all very much. I want to, if you have a burning question for one of our panelists and you would like to stand up, just raise your hand and I'll call on you if you have something you would like to just know about anybody or something you're wanting to ask. Well, I'm sure a lot of people might do that in private today. Thank you all very much for being here and being a part of this discussion. We really appreciate you and appreciate you being here.